Builder! What is this? This is a Sigma 50 to 150 f2.8 optical stabilized version. How much does it cost? Anywhere from $600 to $1,000 on the used market. Has little to no focus breathing, about 100-degree focus throw. Lens barrel does not extend when zooming. The optics are sharp. Will this lens work on my full-frame camera? No, this is a crop sensor lens. It'll only work on super 35mm cameras. It's got a detachable lens collar. There are 3 total versions of this lens. You're gonna wanna get the one with optical stabilization. By all accounts, the other 2 that do not have optical stabilization are not as sharp. Done, roll that intro. What's up everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we are constantly and always still learning. So today we're gonna find out whether or not the Sigma 50 to 150 f2.8 optical stabilized version is gonna be the right lens for you and your overall narrative setup. Now some of you might be wondering, wait, why did I get this old last generation lens instead of the newer Sigma 50 to 100 1.8 that would match perfectly well with my Sigma 18 to 35? Well, there's actually a couple reasons and we're gonna go through them one by one. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, one of the major features I love about this lens is that it does not seem to suffer from any focus breathing. If there was, it's very minimal and it doesn't really catch my eye. When the Sigma 50 to 100 came out and videographers finally got their hands on it, the major complaint that they had was that there was an insane amount of focus breathing from near focus to infinity focus. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it might bother you, it might not, but it's definitely probably not gonna bother your average person watching your narrative film. They're probably more geared towards the story or the visual aesthetics of what you're showing them. But for director of photographies and filmmakers alike, we're a little bit more sensitive to this thing. Speaking of focus, the focus throw on this lens is about 100 degrees, which is awesome. Pretty much anything above 90 degrees is gonna be decent enough for you to actually pull focus with. Some photography lenses have really short focus throws, maybe 30 degrees. And when you're having to do some intricate rack focuses on your subject or whatever the longer take might be, that would just make it very hard to get the shot that you want. So the fact that this lens has a very respectable focus throw, awesome. So one of the obvious reasons is that this lens gives you an extra 50 millimeters of reach. Now, generally speaking, on a narrative film set, that 50 to 100 millimeter is pretty much gonna handle most of your telephoto needs, but knowing that this lens gives me the extra 50 millimeters allows you just a little bit more creativity. Specifically, if you want your subject to stand at the foot of a mountain, or maybe he's just about to enter a cityscape, if you use the lens compression just correct and you move the camera really far back, zoom in, you're gonna basically be able to make that city look like it's huge. Now, this is a completely different video that I'm gonna be tackling real soon, so stay tuned for that. Now, if you shoot your films with matte boxes, then you're gonna be happy to know that when you zoom in from 50 to 150 millimeters, the lens barrel does not extend. So this is great, because if you're thinking about using a matte box, then at least you know that when you're moving around in focal ranges, you don't have to move your matte box forward and backwards. Not only that, if you like to shoot a lot with gradient ND filters, you'll be happy to know that when you rack focus on the lens, the front element does not spin. So therefore, when you have your gradient filter on there, you don't have to worry about it moving along with your focus. Now, lastly, this lens is built like a tank. It's quite heavy because of its telephoto-ness, but the optics are great. Now, if you take a look at these images where I don't have a speed boosted adapter in front of it, it's actually quite sharp when it's wide open. Now granted, this is for a crop censored lens, so I'm not actually using the entire image circle when I'm putting it on my GH5. But if we slap on the Viltrox adapter or the Commlite adapter, it still does quite well. The only time you're gonna run into some problems is that if you're at the longest 150 millimeter range and you have IBIS turned on, when you move that camera left and right, you're gonna get a hard vignette that kind of peaks in. Now this is just because of the IBIS of the GH5. If you turn that off, it does kind of help it a little bit, but generally speaking, if you're at 150 millimeters, you probably don't want to do a crazy insane main pan with this lens. So what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is I believe this lens is actually the better pairing with your Sigma 18-35 than to go for the 50-100. The optics are quite good. You have little to no focus breathing. Your focus throw is about 100 degrees, which is great. And your lens barrel does not extend in or out when you're zooming. And you get an extra 50 millimeters of reach should you require that focal length for your narrative setup. Now, unfortunately, this lens is discontinued, which means you can only really find it on the used market. And depending on who you're buying it from, the lens conditions, it can range anywhere from $600 and maybe even up to $1,000. I don't know, because these lenses don't really pop up all that often. Now, some of you might be thinking, whoa, but this lens is f2.8 where the other one is f1.8. I'd rather have both of these lenses match. And I get it, but I honestly don't see this as a major problem, and here's why. When you're shooting at the telephoto range, especially for a narrative work, and you have subjects talking to each other, what have you, you want the entire subject to be in focus, or at least most of them. If you have this telephoto range and you're shooting at 1.8, you're probably only gonna get like maybe half of them or a little bit less in focus. So chances are when I'm using this lens, I'm either gonna shoot it at 2.8 with a booster on, or I might even move it to f4 just to ensure that my focus pullers are not pulling their hair out, trying to move along with the subject. So would I like this lens to be at 1.8? Absolutely, because there might be a time where I need it. But thinking about it in terms of what I'm gonna use this lens for and what kind of shots I'm looking to do with it, having it at f2.8 is not a big deal. I would actually put more emphasis on my wide angle to normal angle lenses to have a shallower depth of field, more so than my telephoto lenses. And that's it for this week, everybody. If this video has made all the difference in your purchasing decisions, I would really appreciate it if you use my affiliate links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you. This just gives me a little kickback so I can continue making videos like this for you. Now, in the next coming weeks, I'm gonna actually be focusing a little bit more on lenses, not really lens tests, but just some general guidelines to help you figure out what might be the best lens for your narrative film kit. So if there's any questions that you would like me to answer in those follow-up videos in the coming weeks, definitely leave it down in the comments below. I will get to them in the video, or I will answer them in this comment section below. And until then, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.